Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to wait for a couple of minutes to get started, just to let late joiners join, and we'll start with some poll questions while folks are joining, but we'll start that in a couple minutes. So please keep an eye on your screen, please. Thanks. And lo and behold, there's a beginning question number one of our poll to have you respond to. So please go ahead and complete that question. What EPA region are you joining us from? You should be able to see actually all three questions if you scroll in the box. So just go ahead and answer all three of those. We'll leave this up for a bit, again, while people are joining. Great to see we're getting a good turnout, so should have lots of results in a minute to look at. So if you're just joining, please complete the poll questions you see up on your screen. Just scroll in the box. Should be three of them visible to you. We want to know a little bit about you. Let's give it one more minute. Oops, we're starting to get more joiners now. Give it a minute for the time being. Get a few more people on board. As you're joining, please complete the three poll questions. Just scroll through the box on your screen, and we'd appreciate that. "30 more seconds to complete the poll questions." There's three of them on your screen. Please do that, and we'll get started here in about 30 seconds. Wow. Okay, we've got some more joiners. Please complete those three poll questions on your screen. We'll give it another 30 seconds. Looks like we're having some. Don't see any poll questions. Only did one and it disappeared. Do your best to complete as many questions as you can. We'll have some results on question one for sure, it looks like. So, okay, well, let's get started. And to get started, let's focus on everyone who joined a little bit. I see 93 people in attendance, and as the results show where folks are from, they're from everywhere, pretty much. Pretty good balance. Quite a few from Region 5 and 9, but really a little people from every region. So welcome. Thanks for attending. And Devin, oh yeah, okay. So scrolling down, you can see question number 2. How familiar are you with Brownfield's job training program? A lot of folks that are kind of first timers, maybe not too familiar, but that's great. That's one of our specialties, actually, as well as some very familiar people. And number 3, what brings you to this webinar? Do you have some folks planning on applying for a grant? That's awesome. Largest proportion. And then other largest proportion is you're a technical assistance provider. So there's probably some technical assistance to Brownfields people on. There's probably some other folks that you're going to hear about that can help you here. You'll hear about it on this webinar. All right, so you can close your chat box or your poll response summary box, and we'll get started. So welcome to the webinar, Blueprint for Success, Crafting Compelling Brownfields Job Training Grant Applications. Next slide. Just a few technical notes. You could submit questions. We prefer you submit questions in the Q&A box on the bottom toolbar of the Zoom window. You can also do it using chat though as well. We'll be monitoring both, and we'll be getting to those as they come in, but we'll also be having some discussion periods that, you know, that'll be a bigger part of this whole thing, using those boxes. Also note that we're not going to be admitting AI note takers. We will be providing, in fact, I'm going to chat right now. You can download the slides now if you'd like to as a reference. So go ahead and do that if you'd like, and have that open on another window. They'll also be posted, or they are posted, on the KSU tab webpage. I'm sure they'll be on CCLR webpage soon, as well as the recordings, and you've got links to that. And then lastly, if you do have any technical assistance needs with respect to just being able to view or hear this webinar, beyond, you know, maybe trying to call in for an audio connection if you need that, you can email Devin Rainwater, who's working on the back end of this presentation. Next slide. All right, so this webinar is being brought to you by the Technical Assistance to Brownfields program. There are 5 regional providers that are listed on this slide that collectively make up sometimes what we call national tab. We work together sometimes to put on programs like this. The TAB program provides free technical assistance to communities, local governments, and tribes, and nonprofits who are redeveloping brownfields. And we provide expertise in the area of planning, environmental, and economic development expertise. And we also help with folks with job training grants. And you'll hear a little bit more about the roles we play, as well as other technical programs go. University of Connecticut, New Jersey Institute of Technology, and West Virginia University cover the eastern part of the country. K-State TAB program covers the middle part in purple there, and the Center for Creative Land Recycling covers the western United States. There's also some specialty TAB providers like tribal TAB programs. There's based at K-State, and there's a number of other tabs too that specialize in things like revolving loan funds and land banks and things like that are out there. So there's a lot of help through the TAB program. Next slide, please. Our speakers today, Claire Weston, Program Director for the Center for Creative Land Recycling, will be our principal presenter today and gets about 95% of the credit for this webinar. She's worked hard and coordinated it, as well as being a primary presenter. Matt Wojcik with EPA, he is the program manager for the EPA Brownfields Job Training Program. Danelle Wilkins with Green Door Initiative, and Amelia Rose with Groundwork Rhode Island. And not pictured, but on your, I think there's a webcam of her, Stephanie Moniz is with, these are job training grantees. They're sort of the star of our show a little bit. You're going to hear from them on what it's really like to be a grantee and have a good program. Next slide. So our agenda is we'll jump in with Matt to get an overview of the Brownfields Job Training Program. Then we'll hear a little bit from our Brownfields job training grantees about, you know, how things are going for them, some of their tips and tricks and trades. Anyway, we're going to hear from them, and you're going to like it. Then we'll get into the meat of this technical detail with Claire Weston presenting tips and best practices for a compelling grant application. Have some more discussion time and and we hope you enjoy the program. Next slide. So I think at this point, we're ready to turn it over to Matt Walshy.
Yep. Thanks, Blaze. Appreciate that. So overall, there's really a lot of support when it comes to Brownfield job training. We have our regional job training coordinators. I'll actually have their contact information at the end of my part of my slides. But they can really help explain rules, requirements, and compliance, and offer like official guidance on the NOFO. The TAP providers can kind of help share perspective of brownfields, kind of like Blaze was saying, help create job training connections. And the big one is that application support. And then we have our Brownfields job training technical assistance team, which they can help build capacity for program design, implementation, and best practices. But please note that for the Brownfields job training technical assistance team, assistance related to implementation support is not available to applying entities when there is an open Brownfields job training notice of funding opportunity or a NOFO, and that's because they are a contractor to EPA, so they have to follow the EPA competition policy as well. You can go next slide. So what is the Brownfields Job Training Program? Why are we all here for? The Brownfields Job Training Program is really designed to recruit and train unemployed and underemployed residents from communities that are impacted by the presence of brownfields and place them into environmental jobs they may have otherwise been filled from workers outside of the affected community. The program is intended to further sustainable community revitalization by ensuring that residents living in areas historically affected by economic disinvestment, health disparities, and environmental contamination have an opportunity to reap the full benefit of the revitalization and environmental cleanup in their communities, and ultimately help develop the skills and knowledge necessary to obtain full-time employment in the environmental field, cleaning up brownfield sites. Next slide. So the major requirements of this program are really that you must target unemployed and underemployed individuals that are residents living in or near an area adversely impacted by the presence of brownfields or other EPA funded tasks. You must be an eligible entity, which I'll talk about a little bit more later as well. But that could include a city, county, state, tribe, workforce investment board, nonprofit, or college and university. The one required training course we have is the 40-hour Hazardous Waste Operations and Emergency Response, or HAZWOPER. So that training course must be included in the training curriculum, and all graduates must hold a current 40-hour HAZWOPER certificate compliant with OSHA requirements. And that can be done via basically kind of two ways. One is the initial 40-hour training, they complete that, or verification of a prior 40-hour training plus a required 8-hour annual refresher. And lastly, and very importantly, the applicant must meet all threshold eligibility requirements as outlined in the NOFO. And I'm going to drop a link. This is the FY26 NOFO, which closed last year, but it's good to reference for what was in last year. But you can move to the next slide. As of February 2026, EPA has awarded a total of 456 grants, totaling over $119 million through the Brownfields Job Training Program. With these grants, more than 23,400 individuals have completed training, and over 17,400 individuals have been placed in careers related to land remediation and environmental health and safety. And then over the last 5 years, the average starting wage for these individuals has been about $23 per hour. We currently have 77 Brownfields job training grantees. And we do have this map on which you can see on the slide here. And I'm actually going to drop it in the chat so you can interact with it if you want to at a later time. But for current grantees, which are those green dots, to view a description of their program, the training courses they offer, and the certifications their students actually receive, you can click that green dot, and then in the EPA fact sheet row, click the view link in that pop-up window. And you're also able to filter, by past and current grantees. But next slide. So applicants may, but are not required to propose forming a coalition to carry out their Brownfields job training program. Applying as a Brownfields job training coalition may be beneficial to allow the Brownfields job training provider to recruit, train, and place students in environmental jobs, especially in rural areas where the geographic area may be larger. But what's a coalition? A coalition is really a job training, like one lead entity that partners with one or more non-lead eligible entities. And the lead eligible entity, which after this, I'll just say the lead member, submits an application on the behalf of all coalition members. And then those non-lead members would receive subawards. And eligible entities overall are discussed in section 2.a of that FY26 NOFO. And a non-lead member of a coalition may not have an open Brownfields job training grant or cooperative agreement with EPA. For the purposes of this requirement, that term open refers to a grant period of performance that has not ended. And the non-lead coalition members may not be an agency or instrumentality of, or be affiliated with the lead member, except for coalitions in which the state is the lead and one of the members is a regional council or regional commission that is created by a state legislature through a charter or another official action. Another is coalition members may not be members of other job training coalition grant applications, nor may coalition members submit a Brownfields job training grant application as an individual applicant. And then an important note, which I think you can see on the slide on the side there, is that once the lead member submits the application, it becomes the applicant, and the coalition members may not substitute another eligible entity as that lead member after the deadline for submitting applications has passed. Additionally, the non-lead coalition members may not be substituted after the deadline for submitting applications has passed. So if that application is selected for funding, the lead member must partner with the other coalition members that were named in that application, unless EPA approves a post-award change to these arrangements pursuant to 2 CFR section 200.308C. Next slide. All right, so applying as a coalition, it can be beneficial if you want a formal agreement among all parties and you have a coalition lead with strong grant management capacity. A coalition provides a path for eligible non-lead members that lack capacity to really manage their own EPA award to be able to participate and access Brownfield's job training resources. Another forming a coalition may also be potentially beneficial for city and county governments, as this approach can help expand the jurisdiction of their target area. And by doing so, it really creates a more integrated strategy for job training and placement, ultimately enhancing the effectiveness of those initiatives. But just to be clear, Brownfield's job training coalition grants, like the single individual applicant job training grants, must identify one and only one target area. So in a coalition, kind of the difference, like in a coalition, the coalition lead and non-lead members jointly design and can carry out a training program and can share accountability for that performance. But by contrast, a single entity, the applicant retains all programmatic control really and uses partners for specific services or support. But if you're applying as an individual applicant, you're still without having a coalition in place. You can still make subawards for partners carrying out substantive parts of the program. That does, though, require subrecipient monitoring and reporting. And subawardees must also be an eligible entity. You're also able to procure contractors for goods and services for your use, but you must follow procurement requirements. Naming a vendor in your application does not waive you from competition later. And one of the last things here is a memorandum of agreement or MOA documenting the coalition's process must be in place really prior to expenditure and drawdown of any funds that has been awarded to that lead coalition member. And we have developed an MOA template, which is linked on the slide, and I'll drop it in the chat in a second here. But when it comes really just to the application, the minimum requirement would be a coalition agreement or a signed letter of commitment from each coalition member. I'm going to drop all these links that will be very helpful. You can go next, or sorry, I got one more. For the kind of the last part, overall, a coalition really isn't always necessary. And sometimes it may just be extra paperwork and more threshold items to meet. If an individual applicant can meet all requirements and deliver the full program, in that single target area, independently or with sub-awardees or procured contractors, applying as an individual applicant is most likely the most efficient approach. Next slide. So again, beyond that required HAZWOP or training, the grantee can really design a curriculum as they see fit, so long as all courses offered are an eligible use of grant funds and contain a clear connection to Brownfields. And when I say clear connection to Brownfields, that would be all trainings must relate to facilitating the inventory of Brownfield sites, site assessments, remediation of Brownfield sites, community involvement, or site preparation. It is strongly encouraged that one's curriculum be based on the local hiring needs to ensure that participants not only receive environmental training, but also, and importantly, that they secure sustainable full-time employment in the environmental field. So in addition to that HAZWOP training, you can see some training courses on this slide. I'm not going to read just for time, but for expanded descriptions of these and more trainings, you can see section 3.A.4 of the NOFO. We also have a list of eligible and ineligible training courses, and I'll drop that in the chat right now. In that next slide. In addition to paying for those actual courses, fund may be used for more than just that. So some examples: personnel costs for instructors to conduct training, costs for screening and placement of students, outreach activities, and costs associated with eligible participant support costs for related to transportation subsidies, reasonable stipends to compensate trainees for actually participating in the training, and reasonable childcare subsidies. Funds may be used for many other purposes as well, so long as they directly relate back to implementing and running a Brownfields job training program. And section 3.A.3 of the FY26 NOFO provides an even more illustrative list of eligible uses. Next slide. And conversely, grant funds cannot be used for training in general construction skills and trades, like life skills, wraparound services, administrative or indirect costs in excess of 5% of that total EPA funding. Next slide. So in closing, I just want to again stress that applicants must pass threshold to be evaluated. You can look at section 2.A.1 of the FY26 NOFO for what was required last year. But if an applicant fails threshold, they cannot be, move on to be evaluated against the review criteria in that NOFO. And next slide. So here are the regional job training coordinators. If you have specific questions about your program and what you plan to do, you can reach out to your appropriate coordinator. And this is also included in section 1.E of the FY26 NOFO. And with that, I'll pass it back to Claire, or pass it to Claire. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. All right, let's hear from our grantees to kick things off before we really jump into the best practices and tips for drafting a compelling application, because we want to hear from the people who've drafted compelling applications, right? And have run successful programs for years. So let's dig into it. So welcome, Amelia, Stephanie, Donnell. So why don't we start out, if you can just, who are you? What is your entity, and why did you elect to apply for the Brownfields job training grant? What kind of motivated you to go for it to begin with, and what maybe has motivated you to keep applying? Because both of you are repeat grantees. So jump in.
Well, I'm happy to start. I'm Donnell Wilkins. I'm the founder and CEO of the Green Door Initiative. We are located in the city of Detroit. Detroit placed the world on wheels, and everything that's related to manufacturing automobiles has created an overabundance of impacted land throughout the city of Detroit. In fact, in the 1990s, there was an attempt to do an inventory of those complicated properties. And the administration at the time, the city administration, decided to stop counting at 40,000 parcels. So we really represent what the poster child of Brownfield sites look like. And that was a motivation. The other motivation for us doing this work had to do with a number of returning citizens that were being released, and the idea released from incarceration, and the idea is what we're going to do with people, and we, because of our uniqueness around environmental and green collar work, decided, well, we could create a workforce piece that would really focus on helping to build the capacity of our community around uh, getting those properties addressed, providing career options, and providing something that I like to say we create a environmental hero out of in our community, unlikely heroes, right? And giving people a second chance. And so that those two are the motivation why we stay in it is quite frankly because it's a good combination. It's a good model. Our people have been able to truly secure opportunities, career paths. We have a 92% job placement rate. And we found people have been able to launch careers as a result of it. It works. And we think we're meeting a number of needs in the community. So that's me. I'll stop.
Thanks, Danelle. And what about you, Amelia and
Sure.
Stephanie?
Yeah, I'll start. So I'm Amelia Rose. I'm the executive director of Groundwork Rhode Island. We've been a Brownfield job training grantee for over 20 years, starting I think with one of the first grants, or one of the in the early 2000s, that for the Brownfield job training grant. And we are based in Providence, Rhode Island, which is the capital, but we also work in some of the other mill cities that are along the Blackstone River going north. So Pawtucket, Rhode Island, Central Falls, and Woonsocket, all of which are, were built for 19th century industry. Lots of old mill buildings that are no longer being used, or some of them are being used for manufacturing and industry, but a lot of are being turned into residential buildings, apartment buildings, and some that are being torn down. And so we have lots and lots of that. vacant buildings, old brownfield sites, lots of vacant land, a lot of vacant lots, not probably as extensive as Detroit, but a similar kind of thing. We are part of the Groundwork USA national network that also got started around the same time as a partnership between the EPA's Brownfields office and the National Park Service. So there was a lot of interest in that beginning time period to do connecting people who are in brownfield impacted communities with employment opportunities, to do cleanups of contaminated sites, but also just to learn about environmental cleanup and environmental issues generally, and also to connect people through the National Park Service with the protected lands in the Park Service. So that was a big part of the Groundwork USA, the beginnings, the origins of that. We have so very similar to the Green Door Initiative. We work with people who are justice impacted, formerly incarcerated. We have one of our coalition partners, or our primary coalition partner, is called Garden Time, and they work exclusively with people who were incarcerated or justice impacted. And our program is broader than that. We run a few different training programs that are geared to different populations throughout the year. And we've been able to also take the training program as sort of a pipeline, are introducing people to our organization and our programs, and then actually employing them ourselves, doing work in Providence and the kind of Metro Providence area, doing tree planting and green stormwater infrastructure installations, composting, other things like that. And so some people go out and they find work in the private sector, and then other people work with us, community partners. And so it's sort of helping develop a demand within, or like meeting a demand that otherwise wouldn't be funded. But this allows us to meet a need that otherwise does not get funding, such as like street tree care, or tree planting, or stormwater installations. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Amelia. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you bringing up some of your curriculum aspects and some of your partnerships. We are going to get into those conversations again a little later on in the webinar. For now, I'm wondering if you guys can talk a little bit more about what your success has been. It's, you can stick to the metrics, placement rate, types of jobs and stuff, but I also encourage you, if you have any standout anecdotes, so a trainee that stuck out to you and their particular success, I encourage you to tell that story. I think that what makes this program so incredible and frankly a bit different from the other Brownfields grants is it's the inspiration behind it, and the way that it impacts individuals is really a standout element. So we'd love to hear from you on what your success has been, and specifically if you have any inspirational anecdotes in your times managing this grant.
I can jump in for this one. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Moniz. I use she, her pronouns. The Training and Education Program Director for Groundwork Rhode Island. I work with Amelia, and my main responsibility is directing the Adult Environmental Job Training Program that is funded by this EPA grant that I'm super grateful for. I can talk about a little bit about the successes. I like to think of myself as a success. I actually participated in the program in 2016 after coming home. I'm also formerly incarcerated, and I was able to, learn about environmental jobs. I was able to secure employment after completing the program, and I kind of bounced around and then kind of found my way back to Groundwork Rhode Island and worked my way up, and now I get to run the program. But we've had some other really exciting successes. The most recent one I can think of is one of our trainees from our 2024 class who finished our program, was able to be hired on to our internship program, moved up to a supervisory role, and has recently taken on a role with the City of Pawtucket's Department of Public Works as their grounds and stormwater technician. So that's really exciting. And we have other folks who are like moving up behind him, taking on more leadership positions. We're creating more capacity to take on more people. And in general, we tell people that any job can be a green job. So we don't try to push anyone into one career pathway or another, but we've had folks move on to union jobs. We have one gentleman who graduated 2023 who has been in his job and has like moved from like a technician up to doing like concrete science. So it's really cool to be able to introduce people to career pathways that they wouldn't have otherwise thought of.
That's amazing. I hate to follow that one, Stephanie. Congratulations. You're the type of success story that we all hope for. So over at the Green Door, yeah, we've had some really amazing success stories. I will share a couple of them. So we have one person who was formerly incarcerated, really smart young man. Actually, he had all the makings of being successful. He had completed college and all of that. He just made a bad decision around some chemistry. And with that chemistry, he went through what he had to do in terms of doing his time. But we met him. He came through our training program. and in 2023, I believe. And Jelani now is assistant manager of our air quality management program because he understands sort of the science of air quality and all of that. And he went through our program and HAZWAPER and all the other things. He is now able to go out into the community to train community members about what it means to be impacted by bad or poor air quality. When we were having the Canadian wildfires, he was able to help break that down, translate that information in ways that really help the community understand what they're faced with. Part of that team includes air quality monitoring installations and management of those. So another person came through our training program who actually is the lead person for installing the equipment from purple air monitors to other types. And the city of Detroit actually just established they also received the air quality EPA grant, as we did. And we're partners with them, and we're now able to go out into the community, teach people how those installs happen and what it means. So we're excited about what that's doing because that's building capacity among the folks that come through our training, but it builds our capacity as well to be a provider of these services. We recently installed over 100 air monitors for the county of Wayne, for example, because they were so excited about our program. Those are exciting opportunities. Our partners do include like the city of Detroit, the county of Wayne, the state of Michigan. We're doing some work with the Department of Health and Human Services, but we're also working with just regular community-based organizations. And our trainees opportunities have expanded into being a resource to our community partners, which are a variety of them. In order for us to even do the work we do, we also have been able to leverage private sector sort of resources through grantors through foundations, philanthropic organizations, and whatever that has allowed us to really do and provide some wraparound support and whatever to really encourage that success rate. Let me see what other partners. So we are our employer partners have been essential. Many of them are part of the instruction and also interviewing people, providing mock interviews and those kind of things, coming in to speak to the trainees so they get an understanding what the industry is looking for. So I'll stop there, but if there's something else that you want me to share, I'd be happy to do.
No, that's great. And it's actually a great segue because we are going to talk more about those partnerships and your curriculums at the next session when we hear from you again. In the meantime, let's dive in. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories and you're telling us more about your programs. We're excited to hear from you in a little bit in the webinar. So let's jump in now to some tips and best practices for developing a compelling job training application. Okay, so there's a lot of information in this next 20 minutes, guys. So up straight, here we go. But again, you have the recording and you will get the slides. So let's go through it together, shall we? So starting
Claire,
out. Oh yeah.
Claire, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure it's not just me, but I don't think I can see your slides. I messed with my console, but can someone else confirm whether you can see slides or
I
not?
can see them, please.
I can see Claire's slides.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll figure it out on my end. Thank you. Go ahead, Claire. Thank you.
Yeah, it still says it's sharing, but thank you for raising that.
You bet.
If others can't see the slides, please chime in and maybe I can just try resharing, but I think it should be good. Okay, so starting out with demonstrating needs. So a really core element. So starting out here, you want to ask yourself two questions when you're considering applying for a Brownfields job training grant. Why are you doing this and who are you doing this for? And I know that seems like a really basic place to start, but I really encourage you to spend a decent time speaking with your team, speaking with potential partners, speaking with your staff about why you're doing this and who you're doing this for, because the answers to those two questions are really going to drive every element of your Brownfields job training grant, okay? It's going to drive your community needs section. So defining the need in your community is going to drive your curriculum development. What trainings are you going to offer based on the need that you have identified? It's going to drive the partners that you'll engage. Why are you engaging those partners? How do they relate to the needs that you've identified, right? So it's really core that you start with those two questions. And so breaking that down a little further, starting with the why, this really amounts to identifying and describing the need in your community using data. So that might include, why is this training important for your community? So what impact is it going to have? And then also, what environmental challenges does your community face? So Stephanie and Amelia and Donnell, they all mentioned that they had a high number of brownfields in the communities that they were serving through their program. So that's really instrumental, quantifying that need, quantifying those environmental challenges in the community you plan to serve. The other thing, and this is going to come up multiple times, your labor market study. Commit that term to memory. It's very, very important for your application. And in fact, it could be an entire webinar of itself. So if you want more detail on how to conduct a labor market study and what data to pull from that study and how to do it in a way that is efficient and robust, I encourage you to watch Strategies for Successful Brownfields Job Training Programs, because they go into the LMA they go into it pretty detailed. So you're going to want to share the findings from your labor market study and how those findings have informed your curriculum development. And importantly, because this is something that people sometimes forget, you want to be clear and specific about the method used to conduct your labor market study, because you will be evaluated in your application on whether the methods used to conduct your LMA were sound. So sent a survey out, received 30 responses. The survey showed this, conducted interviews with this many employers, conducted a focus group on this day, and this day, right? Specific. So for the who is really about what Amelia, Stephanie, and Danelle were talking about. Who are they really supporting through this funding? So that means identifying and describing your target area. So using demographic data. And then also a little bit more focused than that, who specifically are you targeting? Are you targeting unemployed individuals, formerly incarcerated persons, veterans? Be specific about who you are meaning to support through this funding, through this application. Okay. And then with that target area, make sure that you are consistent between your narrative information sheet, and your threshold criteria response. They're 3 separate pieces of your application, and each of them are going to ask for your target area. So just make sure that you've got a consistent target area described / listed for each of those pieces. So I mentioned data, so let's get into data a little bit more. So you want to use data to identify and demonstrate that need, right? You want to quantify the need, sort of a show, don't tell strategy, right? So there are effectively 4 types of data types that you'll want to pay attention to when you're describing the need in your community. You've got demographic data to demonstrate that the community need is there. That's the basic stuff, population size, unemployment rate, stuff like that. A lot of that you can pull from the US Census Bureau, something a little bit more niche, City Health Dashboard. You'll notice here that I don't have regional, state, or locally specific data sources. This is a national webinar, so it would be hard to include all of that, but let's see if we can get some ideas flowing together. So what state and local data sources have you used or plan to use? And I encourage you to share your ideas or recommendations in the chat at this time. We've also got other tab providers on this call who are able to support you with some more local data sources, among other types of support. But let's see if we can get some stuff rolling in the chat here while I continue to go through. So data type number 2, data on overburdened and sensitive populations. So that might include the CDC Social Vulnerability Index, CVI or SVI, National Equity Atlas, County Health Rankings, and Roadmaps, just to name a few. And then the last two data types, labor market data. Again, here I've mentioned it. I think this is number 3 time I've mentioned it. So you can see how important it is. So a core source for labor market data is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but do not solely rely on data from BLS to inform your labor market assessment. That is not enough. You want to make sure that you are speaking directly with employers, that you're engaging directly with employers through interviews, focus groups, surveys, etc. And that's really going to be the foundation of your labor market assessment, is that those local personal conversations. Okay. And then a little bit more niche, environmental challenges and other vulnerabilities data. So that might include information from EPA's Cleanups in My Community, or CIMSI, US Climate Resilience Toolkit, and the FEMA National Risk Index. But there are so many data sources out there, so you can really kind of go hog wild. The point is, you really want to be specific, and you want to paint a very clear picture of the need in your community using that data. So at this point, we have established that there is a need. We have described that need using data, and we're ready to talk through or develop our curriculum, our training descriptions, right? So it's very important that the training description is connected specifically, or let me get this right, has a direct connection to brownfield remediation and cleanup activities. So when you're writing out those course descriptions, be clear about how they connect directly to brownfield remediation and cleanup activities, just to make sure that those courses are eligible. And a lot is eligible, right? So you just want to be clear about why it should be eligible. I want to draw your attention to the 3 columns in purple here in this table. So this is your training description table, which you don't actually need to include your course description in the table. That is totally an optional thing. That is an optional formatting approach. I like it. I think it works well. But what I want to draw your attention to here are these last 3 columns: cost of course per cohort, total course cost, and percent of grant budget. I cannot overemphasize how critical this piece is. It is a threshold item. So if you do not include this math, this part of the table, you won't pass threshold. So don't forget it. And also always check your math. It's the kind of thing that you might develop this early in the drafting process, and then through several iterations of drafting, things change, budgets change, cost of things solidify. So before you submit, always check your math in your tables to make sure that it reflects the most recent updates to your budget, right? We'll talk more about the actual budget in a little bit, but check your math in this table. Okay. Program structure. This is a fun one. This is the part of your application where you're really going to get into how you're going to conduct the program. Okay, how you're going to recruit, screen, and retain the students, how you are going to support job placement, which you do need to do for at least a year after graduation. So you'll want to set aside funding for that, and how you are going to sustain the program once grant funds are exhausted. And this is the part of your application where you're really going to describe the impact that you're going to make. And so you're going to do that in a number of ways. So you're going to share your outputs and outcomes. And there is a detailed definition of outputs and outcomes provided in the NOFO. I encourage you to read it once, read it twice, maybe read it 3 times, because it does take a second to really understand the difference between outputs and outcomes. But in a nutshell, outputs are the activities, efforts, work products. So things like students enrolled, anticipated graduates, number of certifications earned, average wages, placement rate. Those are your outputs. Outputs, importantly, must be measurable during the project period. Okay. Consider using a table to outline your outputs. Trust me. It's easier to update and refine in your work plan if you do get the grant, in your grant, as you continue to massage the outputs. Having them clearly laid out in a table, really helpful. Your outcomes. That is the result, effect, or consequence of performing said outputs, right? So you graduate a certain number of trainees, and those trainees go on with increased capacity to participate in environmental jobs in the brownfield reuse sector. So that latter piece of the sentence I just said, that's your outcome, right? That is the goal, that is the impact, that is what you're going for. So be cognizant of your outputs and outcomes and clear about those. Outcomes, importantly, that needs to be measurable, but it doesn't need to be measurable within the project period. Okay. Another thing about outputs and outcomes, be purposeful and realistic with your outputs that you propose in your applications, because if you're awarded the grant, those outputs will be identified as deliverables in the negotiated work plan. So you'll need to report on your progress attaining those output goals. So don't overstretch yourself, right? Just be purposeful and realistic about those outputs. And then the last thing I want to say on this is really consider, when you're developing your partnerships, which we're about to get into, how those partnerships engage in the elements of your program, the structure of your program. So what partners are supporting recruitment? What partners are supporting screening? What partners are supporting retention, right? It's all sort of a feedback in your application. So just be considering that. Okay, speaking of partners, right? There are a lot of partners. There's a lot of people at the table in this Brownfield job training program, okay? And so some of the partners include environmental entities, like MARC recipients in your community, city and county health department, or not health department, city and county departments, job readiness and life skills-based organizations, so organizations that support GED prep, substance abuse counseling, maybe one-stop centers, workforce development boards. Matt went over coalitions, so a coalition member might be one of your partners, but again, totally optional. Make sure that coalition grant is right for you. It's not always the right approach. Community-based organizations like faith-based organizations, block clubs, social service providers, and finally, employers, super crucial. Local businesses, environmental contractors, and labor unions. So you're going to want partners in each of these categories, with the exception of coalition, because again, if you're not going for a coalition grant, you don't need to list coalition members. And you're going to want to get partnership letters from each of your partners. And I want to be really clear about the terminology here. These are letters of commitment. They are not letters of support. There's a big difference. So the commitments need to be clear and specific in each of the letters. Okay, so you don't want to send out a stock letter and then just have your partner sign it without any specific information. That's not gonna cut it. It needs to have specific commitments listed in the partnership letter, and those partnership commitments need to be reflected in the narrative partnership section. Okay, right. I want to emphasize employers. So historically speaking, the partnership section of your application is 40 out of 200 points. 20 of those 40 points are employers. So it is the partnership category that is sort of most important for you to describe and engage with. So how do you do that? You want to engage employers early to understand the labor market demand. Again, crucial. Shape your curriculum based on the needs that they've identified, and outline their involvement and commitments. So that might include participating in an employer guest speaker series, engaging in field trips, doing some mentoring, interview commitments. They will interview X percentage of graduates each year, that kind of thing. Being really clear about those commitments and nailing those down. And then engagement strategies, there are many. These are just a few. Might include conducting focus groups and employer interviews, surveying employers and consider offering incentives for survey participation, just so more people respond. And then maybe hosting employer-led workshops and site visits. But there's lots of ways to engage employers. Those are just a few ideas. Okay. Budget. Okay, I've got like 4 slides on budget alone, so buckle up. Okay, so budget development tips. This throws people, which is why we're going to spend a second on it. So, couple overarching tips. Set aside funding to support placement and tracking of graduates, because you have to do that. So just don't neglect that task category. Use the provided budget template and modify it as necessary. It's my recommendation to stick as closely to the budget template as possible, but you can obviously deviate. You will not be, penalized or anything if you don't stick to the budget template. But it is easier for reviewers if it looks something similar to the template. You need to include a budget narrative that provides basis for each cost estimate. We will get into that a little bit more. You need to familiarize yourself with participant support costs. So there's an entire little document on participant support cost guidance. I encourage you to read that to see what types of expenses are eligible. And your participant support cost must not exceed 40% of the award. So take note of that. And finally, administrative costs, like all Brownfield grants, are restricted to 5% of the total award, and all indirect costs are considered administrative and are therefore subject to the 5% administrative cap. The other thing I want to say about the budget table, it needs to be embedded in your narrative. Sometimes it'll be included as an attachment. Don't do that. It will be reviewed. It won't be reviewed if you include it as attachment. So the budget table needs to be in the narrative. Okay. All right. Next. Okay, I know this looks like a lot, but we're going to go through it together. The math can get weird here. So I'm going to go through an example here. So here's an example budget, job training budget, fictitious. And you want to ask yourself 3 questions when you're developing a budget. If you're trying to make the most competitive budget possible, you're going to ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1. Is the instruction and training task category total greater than 60% of the budget total? Okay, so that's this number here, 368,000. Yes, 368,000 divided by 500,000, well over 60%. In fact, it's 74%. Okay, checkpoint 1, passed. Checkpoint 2, is the participant support cost total less than 40% of the budget total? Well, you can't really tell based on this, right? Because your participant support costs, they might be kind of hidden in one of the budget categories, okay? So participant support costs is commonly put in the other category, all right? It can also go into personnel and fringe if it's a W-2 employee that you've hired. But for this purpose of this example, let's say that $65,000 are participant support costs. So of the 100,000 here, 65,000 are participant support costs. So yes, 65,000 divided by 500,000, 13%, less than 40%, check, okay? Third and final, and in some cases most important because this is the part that trips people up, is the instruction and training task category total minus the participant support cost total greater than 60% of the budget total. So that's the 368 minus the 65 divided by 500,000. Yes. 61%. So good to go. All right. So it can trip you up. Go through those, kind of check your math on that. That's going to give you your most competitive budget. Still on budget. Unbelievable. So budget narrative. I just wanted to, you don't have to read this. It's just really to show you the difference between a deficient level of detail for a budget narrative and a sufficient level of detail. So really what's been added here is we've added details on the types of supplies and the PPE that factor into the cost. Awesome, we need that detail, good. In this section, we've added detail on the cost per student. So we've effectively written out the math, $500 per stipend times 96 students equals a total of $48,000. And detail here has been added on the cost per session. So that's 1,500 times 12 sessions equals a total of 18,000, right? So you can kind of see the difference between the two there of an inadequate amount of budget detail in the narrative and an adequate amount of budget detail, okay? Okay, I'm close. So aesthetics they matter. You want to break this up a little bit. Remember that human beings are reading these applications, and it's helpful to break up walls of text. You want to fit a lot of information into this grant. It's going to be about, well, last year it was 14 pages total. It's a lot of information to put into 14 pages. So we encourage you to use tables and charts when you can in certain areas. It gives visual relief. It provides a lot of info in a snapshot in an otherwise prose heavy document. Tables might include demographic information, training program table, that one's crucial, your budget, again, embedded in the narrative, outputs table, partnerships table, leverage funding, all of those are sort of optional, but I do encourage tables when you can use them. And then a milestone schedule, that is an attachment. And I know it's really, really tempting. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, but don't put pictures in your narratives. They take up space and it could make your your application run long. Anything over 14 pages will not be reviewed. And always, always, as I said, check your math before you submit. Okay. All right, this is my last slide, I promise, and then we'll get back to the grantees. So, overview of some common challenges and pain points and some tips for success. So, threshold. People just don't make threshold, or they don't submit threshold responses. So, it's really important that you thoroughly read the NOFO and respond to all threshold criteria questions, even if they don't apply to you. So, if something doesn't apply to you, don't skip it. Just affirm that it doesn't apply to you, okay? Labor market study. Sometimes people don't provide enough data and only use online data and don't conduct employer surveys. We definitely talked about that. So make sure you are utilizing first-hand account employer information through your labor market study. And you want to clearly outline your methods for assessing labor market demand. Employer engagement. You don't connect. Sometimes people don't connect with employers early enough. That is one of the big reasons that we are hosting this webinar before the FY 2027 NOFO is even released, right? It's so you have that time to build those partnerships with employers, to make those partnerships, because that piece can take a minute. So make sure you're engaging with them early, and make sure that your partnership letters are specific and tailored to each partner. And then finally, budget development. Miscalculations, they're common. So just go through those checks to make sure that you're developing the most competitive budget possible, and write out calculations in your narrative to make it really hyper clear how you arrived at each of those totals in your budget, how you arrived at those figures. All right. That was a lot. I know. Let's hear from someone other than me. Welcome back, Amelia and Danelle and Stephanie. So I talked a lot about curriculum. I talked a bit about partnerships, and we talked about some challenges. So I want to hear from you all about what your curriculum your curriculum looks like. Been talking too much, and your partnerships. So go ahead.
So our curriculum, of course, the required HAZWOPER. We do provide some life skill training. We actually have a staff person who is our HR director. She loves to come in and just really lay it on the line in terms of what the real world looks like in interviews and what employers are looking for. So that's part of it. We have certifications and licensing in the industry. So our whole goal is, let's keep this as a comprehensive and just to ensure that certain needs are met, like lead abatement, asbestos removal, or any kind of contamination, kind of remediation on land and whatever. Deconstruction, some small pieces of construction that helps people understand how that's done and learning how to use tools and all that kind of stuff. I could be missing a few things, but we do have some college sort of courses there as well. Like ultimately, we've had several people hired by the water and sewage department. So there are some specific niche kind of trainings that we provide to help people understand the expansiveness of the opportunities in the training. And then, of course, we do have employers from those different areas come in and discuss what they're really looking for and what the realities of the workforce is in their industry. Just to name a few. I mean, one year we literally had someone come out to talk about marine opportunities and boat building and those kind of things. If you have to go out and do a oil spill cleanup or a tanker overturn, is another deal. So some niche kinds of things we try to bring into the curriculum as well. What's trending a little bit that we know in our area in terms of labor market opportunities. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Janelle.
You're welcome.
Stephanie, do you want to answer the curriculum question?
Yeah. Yes, I can definitely do that. So our curriculum similar to sorry, is it Donnell?
Donnell, yes.
Donnell.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very pretty name. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we hit our requirements and we include OSHA 40. We talk about lead and lead abatement. But I think that the way that I structure the curriculum, we jam a lot into 7 weeks, which it feels like a long time until the 7 week starts, and then you're like, oh my God, it's Christmas. But we start with like a really foundational understanding of environmental literacy, and especially how brownfields connect to that, because pretty much our whole city is a brownfield. So we're always at that intersection. And then we focus on different career pathways. I like to introduce them to a wide variety of career pathways. But we especially focus on tree work and on stormwater management because they tend to offer more higher paying wages. Sometimes they're more likely to be year-round work as opposed to just project-based work. We also include a lot of different kind of soft skills training. We have a resume expert come in. We've connected them to resume oh my gosh, it's the end of the day. We connect them to a resume professional where they can get their resumes professionally updated. In terms of partnerships with employers, everyone that we work with, including the field trips and the hands-on experiences, I try to make sure that everybody is a potential employer and they're keeping an eye on the trainees to see who they like and who they feel like they can work with and train. And sometimes that can be a challenge because, folks are not always hiring, even though some of the trainees might connect with the work that they're doing with that trainee. So we encourage them to stay connected either with us, or we really encourage networking. And then, yeah, I think that was everything. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Amelia, did you want to add anything, or should we move on to challenges and pain points?
Well, I guess I was just going to, one thing that I'm thinking about is just that, we have a 7 or 8 week program, depending on, we have 3 different programs throughout the year. And so, but people often stay with us after that time ends to do more advanced skills training. It's not paid for by this job training grant, but I think it's a really important thing to mention. We don't sort of just say goodbye to people immediately. We do keep people around. People either work for us sometimes, either in a transitional period, like for maybe a few months, 3 months or something, before they go and are able to find full-time employment. It's not like instantaneous that people just leave the program and then amazing, have all these opportunities open up for them. It does take time, and it takes, especially for people where they've been underemployed for a long time or they've been unemployed, it can take some time to find an employer who's willing to take a chance on them. But then sometimes people stay with us for a year, 2 years. And we even have some people who are on our landscaping team who have been with us for over 10 years now. I've been at Groundwork since 2014. So some people just stay with us, and they are employed by us, as I mentioned before. But just to say that sometimes people need more than just that 7 weeks or that the basic curriculum, and to like think about how you might create that pipeline. I think it's been a successful strategy for us, or like that more like long-term engagement with people. I guess I'll stop there and we can go on to the next question.
Okay. I mean, I before we move on to challenges and pain points, I do think we should dig into the partnerships a little bit more. How did you all cultivate those relationships? And I know that might be a little bit hard of a question to respond to, considering many of you you've been working with many of these partners for a while now, and it's like, how did you cultivate them to begin with? But how did you cultivate those relationships? Because I think that's sometimes a very difficult thing to navigate when you're starting out as a Brownfields job training grantee.
Let me jump in here because this is really key. One, we targeted employers who were trying to compete for opportunities at the local level, at the city. They needed help with bidding and those kind of things. So we support and help small employers and contractors that way to make them more competitive in this. They're stronger. They're then able to be a support to our population. Now, with that said, we created and we still keep, it is an ongoing thing, is our employer advisory committee, and everyone is invited to participate in that. And that's really helpful. We feed them at least once a year, where we get to a captive audience and we actually get to talk to them, and have adjusted some of our training based on what they say seems to maybe be, and this is something we could talk about in the pain points, but maybe a problematic, they noticed as a trend coming out of our training program. But they were committed to helping us. So building relationships with them long-term has kind of resulted from that. And we've seen a lot of competition among our employers. There's a lot of, I'll never forget one time we had one employer. She would come in, she's been a part of our program for many years, but she would come in and say, I need 9 people. I need the best 9 people that you have. And so can I come in early before the job fair or something? We encourage everyone to participate in the job fair, so they can interview and engage that way. And then whenever we have special events and whatever, we're inviting them out, one, to support us. We're a nonprofit. Occasionally we do have events where we need some donations and whatever. They've been strong in terms of supporting us along the way there. And because our people are the best. When they come up through our training program, I tell them we train in love, but we don't coddle anyone. So we're really all about making certain that they understand what their mission is in terms of taking the course seriously and whatever. And ours is a 12-week, and sometimes it's been as long as 16 weeks. We want to hand them off to an employer, and that's why we can brag about that 92% job placement rate. And I often say we would have 100% if everybody wanted a job, and that could be a pain point too. So those are some of the ways that we've been able to cultivate and maintain good relationships with our partners and our employers in particular.
Thank you, Donnell. Amelia, you want to add on to that and then maybe segue into your top challenge or pain point and how you've overcome that over the years?
Sure. I think for us, we're a small organization, and we're not as well known for being a workforce development organization compared to some of the other kind of entities that are in the Providence area that have like a direct line to unions, or are like very integrated into the state's Department of Labor and Training, like Governor's Workforce Board, grants and that kind of thing. Sometimes I think the green industry is seen as lower paying or like unskilled labor or that type of thing. That's just been my sense over the past couple of years. But I think just by like doing good work, we've been able to build a steady and positive reputation. We do a lot of our own work, so we're doing, as I mentioned, like tree planting, stormwater management, and that type of thing, and like light construction work, and depaving and things like that. So we have been able to, through our own work, we've been able to build good relationships with municipalities. That's a really big one, by getting grants for our organization, but in partnership with the municipality to do 500 trees or a bunch of stormwater management projects or something. And so we are like bringing resources to a community and then building relationships with the DPW or with the planning department or whoever, or the parks department. And then that can lead to jobs potentially for our job training students. Also, we have cultivated a lot of connections with smaller landscaping companies, tree companies, and I think the internship program has also helped with that, placing people in an internship the last week of the program, and then giving people a chance to try out an employer and have the employer try out the trainee. And then I will also mention, in terms of like the HAZWOP or environmental services types of work, there's been more success. It's harder to get the attention of like Clean Harbors or like a big company like that, but they do a lot of hiring in our area through temporary staffing agencies. So when people are able to go through the resource options or Aerotech or something, it's not ideal necessarily, but it is like a good foot in the door. It's $20 an hour. It's like a 6-month contract to do something that's HAZWOP related, and then that often can lead into permanent work. So we've sort of just like, it's sort of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, but in terms of employers, but we have done, bringing people together for conversations, for meetings. We do a lot of one-on-one meetings with the potential employers, and just like kind of, I think that steady building of relationships over time has helped us.
Great. Top pain point for you, Danelle?
I mentioned earlier that we would have 100% job placement rate if everyone wanted a job. Yeah. Sometimes that's a pain point, right? People come in, we try to give them, of course, a couple weeks in before some realize this is not the place for them. So top pain point for us is if you stay in, but you never really was interested in accomplishing the end goal, that can be somewhat of a problem. We like to try to identify those things. We've had issues where some students haven't gotten along with instructors. We're really careful about who we bring before the people we serve, that they have to have a heart and a mind to be there in support of the folks that come through our doors. Sometimes that's not always a good, mix for us. Over the years, that's been sometimes an issue, but we try to address it immediately. With conflict resolution, some of our special conversations throughout the training, a couple hours on a Friday, where we may invite, a counselor or somebody out, like, okay, we're going to talk about conflict resolution. We're going to talk about going into a workplace where you may not be welcomed, but how do you hang in there because what's important for you? So those things are important and may have caused some pain points. We've had budgets where we met our budgets, even exceeded our budgets, and then something beyond our control where that money didn't come through the way we wanted to. And so making decisions about, what do we focus on? What is our priority? How do we get through it so our students can get what they really, really need and deserve to get in terms of benefiting from the training? There are probably others because I'm not as involved on the, the one-on-one direct stuff as I used to be in the beginning of all of this. But I get the stories, I hear the stories, and I'm there to give advice and some direction on how we need to address or remedy some of the issues that come through.
Well, you all make such a great impact, and thank you for sharing your stories and your experience. It's so so valuable to everyone on the webinar today. So as we're wrapping up here, I think let's move on to just some takeaways. I'm going to fly through this really quickly just to give everybody some next steps. So things to do ASAP. Register in sam.gov. You need that registration in order to apply for this grant. So don't hesitate. Contact your tab provider in your region if you need help with this. Make sure you're clear on why you're doing this and who you're doing this for, as we discussed. Review your labor market study or work on getting that data. So that you can effectively demonstrate need in your application and develop a responsive curriculum and all that. Solidify partnerships and confirm how each partner will be involved. And watch out for additional Brownfields job training webinars following the NOFO released. So that has not been released yet, but once it is released, there will be more information with more specific info about award amount, due date, all of that stuff. Draft and develop your application, things to do in your first month. So you might want to open a public comment period and notify the public that you'll be applying for this grant. You'll want to solicit partnership letters from partners, again, specific. You'll want to develop your curriculum. You can discuss training course eligibility with your tab provider. So definitely be in touch with us on that front. And then you'll want to take a stab at drafting your application. Don't wait on that. The sooner you have a draft, the sooner you can get it reviewed and the more you can work on it. In your second and third month, you'll want to finish drafting your application and get your application reviewed by your tab provider. We will be pretty thorough in our reviews. And one thing that I want to highlight here is when you send your application, please send your narrative your narrative response, your narrative information sheet, and your threshold criteria response. Those three elements, and your partnership letters, because we have to kind of look at all of the pieces to do a full review of your application. It just makes it a lot easier for us to really make sure that you've got all of the varying elements, right? And then these are the regional points of contact for your EPA Brownfields tab providers by regions. So you can see that here, and you will get these slides, so you will have all of this information. And then here's our contact info from the webinar today. And then I'm going to leave this slide up for a bit while we respond to some questions. So we want to hear your feedback on the webinar as we continue to improve this content. So if you can click the link here, well, we'll put it in the chat. So Blaze will put this link in the chat. You can fill that out, or you can go ahead and respond to it on your phone by scanning the QR code that you see on your screen. So let's move in the last 10 or so minutes here, less than that, to some Q&A. Okay, all right, let's see here. So we are exploring how to better align workforce training opportunities with the needs of diverse populations, including immigrants who may benefit from additional language support to fully participate in technical training programs. Could you please advise, A, how frequently Brownfields job training grants are offered, annually or another cycle, whether these grants allow for research or needs assessments to better understand employment barriers and training needs among specific populations. There's another part to this question, but Matt, do you want to jump in on that piece first?
Yeah, sure. For the grants and how often they're offered, historically, they've pretty much always been annually. As for the second part of that question, it gets a little bit complicated on that. It's kind of, when I ask questions like, does it relate to operating your Brownfields job training program? So it just kind of depends how you're doing that. That would be I would recommend reaching out to your regional job training coordinator, which I kind of talked about in my slides. And they can kind of go over you with that specific situation and kind of how it works in your region. That would be the best practice for that one.
Okay. And you mentioned in this question the need to serve diverse populations and responding to language differences. Amelia, it's my understanding that you conduct courses in Spanish. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience has been like and how you differentiate and how you operate with those two course offerings?
Yeah, we were able to find local trainers who can do OSHA 10 and HAZWOPER in Spanish. And so we do offer that to with the one of the ways that we've changed our model over the few years, many years of doing this project or this grant program is instead of like recruiting our own cohorts, we sort of go to an organization that has a client base and just provide training to their client base, which has helped us, and it helped us create a lot of more partnerships and sort of develop our program and to where it is now. And so one of those partners is organization called Progreso Latino that specifically serves immigrant communities, and they have a large Spanish speaking population that they serve with all sorts of different social services. And so we did, for the past couple of years, we've been offering HAZWOPER in Spanish and sometimes OSHA 10, depending on what their needs are. It's just like a one-off course that we offer. We don't do like our full 7-week program for that group just because we don't have, it would be a lot. We'd have to like kind of create the whole program in Spanish. But it's been very well received. There's often, it kind of depends, but there's been a lot of people who take that HAZWOPER course. A lot of times it's people who are sort of have been in the industry or who know more about the industry than like our English speaking population. I feel like with our English speaking population, our regular program, like nobody has ever heard of any of these jobs ever. It's like a totally new thing, the environmental services field. But with the Spanish language folks, it's like there's a lot of people who maybe already work in that field or who have gone through different jobs and have been, underemployed or whatever. So that's like been our main experience, but it's been successful, but it's not like a core part of the program. It's sort of an additional thing that we do to offer because we know that it's a need in our community.
Yeah, and I think what I would say to you, Catherine, as well, just my advice on your second point in particular, is when you're developing out your community needs section, really being clear when you share data on the community you intend to serve, showing that English as a second language individuals is a high proportion of the community that you serve, using that as some background as you kind of develop out your curriculum. And then if you were to be awarded the grant, there are opportunities in the budget to sort of evaluate the impact of your program, evaluate the way that it's going so that you can adapt a little bit as needs shift. So kind of thinking strategically about how you might do that to, again, as you say, be effective and inclusive as possible by incorporating those appropriate supports so you can kind of evaluate as you go, in addition to figuring out the community need on the front end. Okay. Clarification. We would not request to train people in different language, rather to reinforce their English skills. Okay. So that is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, everybody else on the call, that is definitely a really common wraparound service that we see, that a number of grantees work with partnership and partner entities that provide that type of support. Resume development, improving language skills, that kind of thing. And Amelia and Donnell, do you work with partners in particular that do those type of, like, support that type of wraparound service?
With Progreso Latino, they would provide those types of services. Yeah,
they provide those. Got it.
Yes, we do. The Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation and others, and we've been recruiting Spanish-speaking folks to help provide training and train the trainer kind of things. Every time we do a trainer, we're inviting professional folks from their organizations to assist with that. So that's a partner in the community that's really important to us. They've helped with translating fact sheets and other things for us. So yeah, that's a key partner.
Thank you.
And I'm also gonna drop a link in the chat here for a PLC call we did that's titled Identifying and Leveraging Wraparound Services. So that would be a helpful watch. And I dropped the Q&A on how you can join those PLC calls every month. So thanks.
Thanks, Matt. We are just about at time, so we've gone over some questions. If you have any questions for us, additional questions, please be in touch. I mean, we're here to support you, and as you work on your applications, as you consider your curriculum development, as you consider how you might design this program. So we are here to help you, and definitely stay in touch so that you are the first to know when the FY 2027 NOFO is released. Okay, anything you wanted, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Anything else you wanted to say, Blaze, before we sign off?
No, go and do great things. Great webinar. Thanks for everybody's participation. And yeah, we look forward to seeing lots and lots of applicants this year.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Matt's got some, he'll let us know when it's time to apply.
Yes. All right.
Great.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited I got to spend some time with you guys today.
Good luck. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, grantees. For your
Yes,
time.
thank you so much.
Thank you
Wonderful.
for having me. Appreciate you.
Bye, all.